Good Shabbos. Now don't worry, this is not a fundraiser. I begin with this disclaimer because once most involved, knowledgeable Jews hear the rabbi invoke our Torah portion, Tru'mah, they know that a fundraising pitch is about to ensue. You see, Tru'mah describes the building of the tabernacle, and God commands all those whose hearts are willing, all those whose hearts are so moved, to contribute gifts of gold and silver. It was essentially the first building campaign of our people. So usually, if you hear a rabbi invoking that phrase, it means you better get out your checkbook because this is going to be very expensive. But this week, the phrase struck me in a very different way. It happened during a Zoom call with our friends Yiftach and Sivan Mas from Israel. Now, many of you will remember Sivan from when she served as our community shlicha, or emissary from Israel. And her husband, Yiftach, you also may recall because he was the one who created the beautiful graphic designs of our Temple Israel prayer book. In any case, Yiftach and Sivan are among our dearest friends. And I must say that one of the reasons that I am so staunch in my support of Israel is because of them. For whenever critics attack Israel, I immediately think of Sivan and Yiftach, who are among the most moral, ethical, compassionate, and peace-loving people I know. It is not that Israel is a perfect society, to be sure, but I am defensive of her in no small part because of my connection to her people. Another reason that I tend not to overly criticize Israel is the issue of proportionality. Should we really be excoriating Israel more than we do Russia, which is slaughtering hundreds of Ukrainian innocent citizens for no reason, or Saudi Arabia, or China, or Myanmar, or Syria? Yet another reason for my reticence in this regard is empathy. I think how I would react if I lived in a region where all of my neighbors were trying to kill me and my children on a regular basis. And then there is the issue of balance. Israel already has more than enough anti-Zionist and indeed anti-Semitic enemies scrambling for her demise. Should we really be counted among them? Which side of the scale should we be leaning on? And then finally, as I mentioned, there is the people factor, the Yiftach and Sivan factor, if you will. These are people I know. Not just them, but hundreds of Israelis whom I have come to admire, and who, to my mind, are as decent, loving, caring, and moral as any people I have ever encountered. So you can imagine my dilemma when on this Zoom call, Yiftach and Sivan implored me and our reform movement to publicly and forcefully protest the impending judiciary changes being pushed by the Israeli Knesset. Their hearts were so moved in opposition to these legislative initiatives that they were literally shaking with emotion. Now, these are not people generally given to anger. They are no anti-Israel activists. To the contrary, Yiftach served many years longer than he was required as an officer in the army, as did their children. These are patriotic, measured, sane, thoughtful, and gentle souls. And yet these same gentle souls told me, Paul, we have been out in the streets protesting every single day for the past 2 weeks. There we go. This is Yiftach in the forefront of one of these protests. We are fighting for the very survival of the Jewish state, he told me. If these laws are passed, the Zionist enterprise is doomed. They believe this because the judiciary will be stripped of any real power once the Knesset is able to override the court's rulings with only a simple majority vote. they are not alone in this fear. They, along with Israelis of all political stripes, are out in the streets protesting against this change and others, including the proposed changes to the law of return, changes that will negatively affect us as well, since many American Jews will no longer qualify as Jews for the purpose of Israeli citizenship. There is even the fear that ultra-Orthodox Shas party will succeed in having cases moved from the secular courts to the halachic religious courts. Yiftach and Sivan believe that in this case, young Israelis in large numbers will emigrate away from Israel rather than enlist in the army under such an ultra-religious regime. Indeed, you may have read a letter from the members of Israel's submarine corps in which they state that these proposed changes will undermine their command, making it much more difficult, if not impossible, to defend Israel's borders from the sea. And of course, they are mortified by the threatened assault on women's rights. That is my friend Sivan right there in the left-hand corner. One change in particular that could also affect us is that members of the religious coalition are proposing to make it a criminal offense for a woman to dress inappropriately at the Kotel, the Western Wall. Imagine how you will feel when you get that call that your daughter, mother, sister, or grandmother has been arrested for wearing a t-shirt while on a mission to Israel. Here is the recent demonstration that began when the Women of the Wall, along with hundreds of Reform rabbis who are presently at the CCAR convention in Jerusalem, attempted to celebrate Rosh Chodesh at the wall. That is, on the right, is Rabbi Hara Person. Not only is she the president of the Central Conference of American Rabbis and a great leader, but also in earlier years, the editor of all my published books. In any case, all might have been lost at this Rosh Chodesh celebration had not another good friend of ours, Israeli Reform rabbi and now member of the Knesset, Gilad Kariv, used his legal immunity as an MP to bring a Torah to the group with impunity. Now, with all of these draconian changes in the offing, you can understand why they asked me, why they are asking you to get involved. Now, you may be wondering, what can we do from here? Well, one thing is to support the Reform Movement's Israel Religious Action Center. I must tell you, well, actually, I guess this is a fundraising sermon after all. But I must tell you that a donation to the center is a very good place to begin, as they are in the forefront of this battle against theocracy and religious discrimination in our beloved homeland of Eretz Israel. As you have sensed, I am sure, this Zoom call with my dear friends put me in quite a quandary. I defend Israel in no small part because of my love for Yiftach and Sivan. But here were Yiftach and Sivan asking me, indeed imploring me, to bring these issues before all of you and to ask you, in turn, to apply whatever pressure you can on the new Israeli government. So that is what I am doing here. But I would, nonetheless, counsel you to do so with caution, within the family, as it were. Even with all of these challenges, Israel does not need any more enemies than she already has, and we must not be counted among them. Let the Israeli authorities know what the consequences of their actions might be, by all means. But remember that Israel is still the only true democracy in the Middle East, and will continue to be, no matter how regrettable these new measures may be. Ironically, this discomforting conversation occurred during a Zoom call organized so that we could make plans to visit with Sivan and Yiftach immediately following our upcoming Motor City mission to Israel in celebration of Israel's 75th anniversary as a democracy. Friends, Once the Zoom was over, I must tell you that I was left with a strange sense of introspection. For it was quite apparent to me that in having their hearts and minds moved so vehemently, my friends were also quite energized. And that led me to consider what moves my heart, in addition to my love for Israel, of course. And I realized that what moves me perhaps most is my abiding love of nature and my abhorrence of our reckless violation of God's natural world. I will not go into further details here, as that would make for a very long sermon. But you will surely be hearing more from me about this crucial aspect of our Jewish tradition as I head towards the sunset of my own career. And finally, what moves my heart, what moves all of our hearts, is our families, which is why I end with this photo of my granddaughter Adina in her I Love Shabbat t-shirt. Because, well, why not? But actually, I end on this particular slide for another very important reason as well. It is not just for the kfelling. You see, to me, these issues are all intertwined. For when we love someone, some place, or something, we become willing to fight for that person, place, or thing. My friends, Yiftach and Sivan, love Israel so very much that their hearts are moved to protest and to fight for her democratic future. Join them if your heart is so moved, or find the issue which moves your own heart. I am sure it will be a cause worth fighting for. And in the spirit of this Torah portion, which is often used for fundraising, perhaps a cause worthy of your donations as well. And so, this is my prayer on this Shabbat of Tru'mah. O God, may our hearts be moved to bring the gifts of justice, love, equality, and friendship to our world, the gifts of generosity, holiness, purity, and peace. Shabbat Shalom.